better way to do this. Let me show you a better way. You don't have to be.
And we are live, just 1 minute late. You guys know I don't like to be late at all, but sometimes it happens. I was having some pre-show conversation with Matt, who's an awesome dude. I think we're going to have a great show today talking about mushrooms. I found Northspore this year. I think I saw an ad for them on Facebook or something like that. And as you guys know, I've always been into mushrooms. I love mushrooms. I love to eat mushrooms. I love to find mushrooms. And I grew up in central Pennsylvania where mushrooms were everywhere. I watch stuff come up online and I see people posting pictures so happy they found like chicken of the woods. And I'm like, it's a great mushroom. I miss the days when it was a second tier mushroom. They were everywhere. We used to go out and get matakis, which are hen of the woods, and morels and chanterelles and all kinds of stuff, even puffballs if you get them early enough. And down here, it's really hard. So when I saw some of the equipment that they offered, that's what really turned me on. And I was going to get a mono tub, and I thought, well, maybe they'll sell me one of these boom rooms at cost. I reached out to one of their people on Twitter, X, and they sent me a boom room for free just for reviewing it. That was about 2 months ago. I've grown more mushrooms in 2 months than the last 2 years combined, at least. I'm getting mushrooms popping up in my garden because I'm throwing spent blocks in there. I picked that up from some videos they did as well. This is going to be a great show. And mushrooms are awesome because you can grow them indoors or out. They're high in protein relative to other things anyway. They're not as high in protein as meat, but they are a very high protein source. They're medicinal. And the protein thing is more about that you can get all your amino acids that are essential from them. So people that are highly vegetarian or vegan in their diets, this is a huge benefit. But as preppers, the benefit is you can grow them inside. I mean, a closet-sized space can grow more mushrooms than you can probably eat if you get good at it and efficient at it. There are varieties that are super simple, like oysters. We'll be talking about all of that today with Matt in just a moment. Before we do, let's go ahead and hear from our sponsors of the day. Sponsor day number one today is Start9 Private Servers. You know, you really can take back your technology with Start9. You can take back ownership of your data. You can access all your files, all your images, everything from anywhere in the world over a completely secured, encrypted connection. And you're able to do that by running your own server to store your own data. Now, I know a lot of you guys are big on using the cloud. There is no cloud. The cloud is a generic term made up to market to you. There is only somebody else's computer. So like Amazon Web3, you're on somebody else's computer, or Google Drive, you're on somebody else's computer, which means you can be shut out. More importantly, if I'm a hacker and I'm good at what I do, I want to break into Google Drive. I don't want to break into, Matt, who's waiting to come in the thing. I don't want to break into his computer. I don't get that much. Hackers attack central databases because it's the mother load. So you're hard to find, you're very secure, and you're one-off. So you're what's called a weak target that way. You can also do things like run your own Bitcoin node, run your own Lightning node, run something like BT Pay Server, and be your own merchant account using Start9 and a ton more. Check them out, and you get 9% off all the stuff at Start9 if you're an MSB member. And that might just be enough to cover the cost of your MSB for a year, depending on what you're buying. And then you can always stack that by using a Fold gift card and get another discount plus sats back when you buy from Start9. So check that out as well. Next up today, I'm a big Bitcoin bull. I am, but I don't believe in one investment. I also really like stacking silver and gold. I've been working with JM Bullion as a sponsor since 2013. It's 2025. That's more than 10 years, 12 years. These folks have been with us. That is forever in the world of podcasting. They have better pricing than all the big silver houses like Lear Capital and Monex and what have you with their advertisements on mainstream television and what have you. They also give you a discount if you're a member. And, I can talk to the president if there's ever a problem. And that's a big deal to me. I actually turned down Lear Capital because they gave me some person at the very bottom of the organization that would be our customer contact. I don't do that when I'm asking you guys to spend your money with somebody. I need to be able to talk to somebody that can fix problems if they pop up. With that, hey, I'm really excited to bring Matt McInnes on from Northspore, co-founder of Northspore. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jack.
I'm pretty excited to have you guys on. Mushrooms are like a passion for me. I really do love eating them even more than growing them, honestly. And I also have a lot of faith in their medicinal properties as well. I don't even think we've scratched 1/10 of 1% of the surface on what they can do. I just finished reading Fantastic Fungi by Paul Stamets and others, and I'm blown away by some of the things we don't know. But before we get into that, what I want to know from Matt is, let's go back, like you're spacing out in study hall in high school or something. You probably at that time weren't like switched on to growing mushrooms yet. How do you get from whoever you were as a young guy about to graduate high school to the place you're in now as a co-founder of a mushroom company?
Sure. Yeah. So surprisingly, when I was in high school, it's kind of when I first encountered the world of mushrooms through some of Paul Stamets' work. I really like being in the woods and being able to understand what I was looking at. I kind of grew up foraging for berries and stuff like that, but I was always aware of mushrooms and would often go out with a field guide and try to figure out what I was looking at. It wasn't until I was in my late teens, I'd moved from my home. I grew up in Portland, Maine, and I moved up to kind of right outside of Acadia National Park on an island off the coast of kind of down east Maine. And it was there that I kind of took the next step from, trying to figure out what I was looking at to trying to find actual edible mushrooms. So I spent a good bit of my kind of 20s learning how to foraging for edible mushrooms, selling the mushrooms to restaurants, consuming a lot of them myself. And then when I was kind of thinking about starting a business, I was doing it with a couple buddies of mine, one of whom has a background in sort of the laboratory process of working with mushrooms. So he's a trained mycologist. We're like, what do we want to? We wanted to start a business doing something, and we wanted it to be kind of agriculture based. So we ended up actually starting Northspore as a fresh mushroom farm, and that was really the first experience in cultivating mushrooms that I had. And we started very small. We grew oyster mushrooms on buckets. It's like a very kind of beginner friendly, but very productive way of producing an abundance of mushrooms on a short time scale. So we had these stacks of buckets in this humidified outbuilding. We were harvesting mushrooms every day and then selling them to farmers markets, selling them to restaurants. And then kind of like, we were experimenting with growing other species other than oysters. We ended up doing a number of different cultivation techniques, growing the business quite a bit. And all the while we were doing the whole laboratory process that underpins mushroom farming. So it's kind of like doing seed saving or producing your own seeds to have your own vegetable farm. We were kind of doing that process, but for mushroom growing. So we quickly discovered that there is this demand for the mushroom spawn, the mushroom cultures, the laboratory implements, the growing systems. We sort of ventured more into that realm. And today, Northspore is mostly, a supply for mushroom cultivation supplies. We still grow mushrooms for ourselves, but we're not selling fresh mushrooms anymore.
Gotcha. I find a lot of people take a similar path on some things if they go the route that you talked about, which is not only are you doing one thing, you're doing like the precursor to the product. And I see that a lot of times in people that maybe get into breeding rabbits and they end up making more money selling breeding pairs than selling meat rabbits. And it just makes sense to take the direction of the business that has the highest ROI for the input, and also that recognizes that you can dictate things to markets, but markets, if you listen, will dictate things back to you and tell you what's really in demand. The story I always tell with that is Volvo is known as like the safe car. They don't want to be a safe car. They want to be a cool car. And I'm talking the 70s. If you've seen a 1970s or 80s Volvo, cool is not what comes to your mind. But they ended up realizing since they had the highest survival crash rate, they just embraced it and ran with it because the market gave them that, right? So embracing the market is a smart business move. With that, let's talk a little bit about one of the things that I find really unique about what y'all are doing. There's a ton of companies out there selling spawn blocks, plug spawn, all of it, right? Grain spawn. You guys sell some really specialized equipment for people that want to grow mushrooms indoors, either because they just want to or because they live somewhere I live where it's actually pretty difficult outdoors. Tents and bins, specifically monotubs and Martha tents. And I looked into that, and I was going to build something myself. And when I saw what y'all were producing and realized by the time I built it, I would spend almost as much money and it wouldn't be as good. And so can you talk about like what led you guys to develop these tools and kind of the difference between growing in a tub versus a tent?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we really ventured into the growing systems to kind of fix the issue of people trying to grow mushrooms, but not having the right environmental conditions. You need humidification, you need proper airflow. And actually those two things kind of work against each other. The more airflow you have, the drier your conditions are. So having systems that are kind of designed to balance these competing things, is kind of essential for mushroom cultivation. And, like if you want an abundance of mushrooms and you want to have consistent harvests, you really have to do it indoors. You can grow mushrooms outdoors seasonally. You can grow them on logs. You can grow them in beds. But it's a lot harder to have that consistent harvest unless you're, I guess you can do like managing logs and dunking logs and stuff, but it's very labor intensive to have that type of consistent harvest. So yeah, we saw kind of an opportunity to make things a little bit more accessible for people. I think Northspore tries very hard to kind of have the full journey with mushrooms from, the very beginner first time grower up to professional mushroom farmers, and really like having that be accessible to everyone. So yeah, I think the bins and the tents they're kind of like adaptations of these classic styles of growing mushrooms, actually most associated with psychedelic mushroom production, but we've adapted it kind of to be more catered to the culinary.
That's funny too, because I'm a bit older, if you can tell. And I was a kid in the 80s, and everybody knew somebody growing a bit of cannabis in the closet. And I tell all the people that are big into indoor hydroponics and aquaponics today for vegetables, like we owe so much to those people because they pioneered all the systems that we use today, even if we're just growing, edible vegetables instead of growing the sacred herb or what have you. That's interesting that there's a similar history there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's interesting, just kind of this proliferation of people growing edible mushrooms is relatively new too. Like, and we were in your introduction talking about, there's an abundance of spawn producers and places to get this stuff for small growers. It wasn't like that not that long ago. I mean, one of the reasons why we started producing mushroom spawn and fruiting blocks and all this stuff, it's because there wasn't actually an industry catering to small growers. There were these spawn companies, but they, the vast majority of their revenue came from these big button mushroom farms in Pennsylvania or in California. And really, they didn't care about these small mushroom farmers. So it kind of made this opportunity. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride over even just the past decade to kind of see how much interest in mushroom growing there is, and trying to develop and make new tools for people to make the process a lot easier.
Could you talk a little bit about the Boom Room tent? Because it's a Martha tent, but it's so far beyond that, in my opinion. I can see you've got one set up back there behind you. I recognize the ultrasonic humidifier. I've got one sitting in the other room right over there. Kind of, how does that system work, and what makes it work so well?
Yeah, so I mean, the Martha tent's kind of an interesting thing. Like it's named after Martha Stewart, and she had a line of these like tents for growing herbs that you could buy at Home Depot or whatnot. And these growers, early mushroom growers, were converting these tents with humidification system and airflow. And that usually took cutting holes and stuff and finding sort of these somewhat janky systems of ultrasonic humidifiers and inline fans and stuff. So we basically just took that classic model and then tried to source stuff and put together a system that really was kind of plug and play. You weren't burning out your fans because they weren't designed to be used with a humid system. putting controls, making sure that everything is sort of spec'd for mushroom cultivation. But it's an incredibly efficient way of growing an abundance of mushrooms. I mean, we have people with the boom room tent that actually produce commercially. Like they're growing enough mushrooms, they're supplementing their farmers market stands. You know, the diversified mushroom farm or diversified vegetable farmers who are adding a little bit of mushroom to their CSAs or farm stands.
I could definitely see that. I've definitely grown more than I can eat. I've started learning new methods of preservation, because one of the things is you're a new grower. All of a sudden, there was no mushrooms or even pins, and then you take a day off of really paying attention. You walk in and you're like, oh, I got to do something with this pretty quick, because they don't stick around long if we don't take some actions to make them do that. And I've come up with a pickling recipe for pinks. And I've always found them like an okay mushroom, but they're a little thinner. They're not as meaty as like an Italian oyster or something. And I do a pickle with them with some smoked paprika as part of it. And they're freaking fantastic. They're probably one of the best pickling mushrooms I've ever found. And I'm kind of stoked because it's not hard to self-cultivate spawn from oysters. That's actually from blue oysters. That's just grown on coffee from stem. And I got to get that into some blocks soon, because it's fully involved. And I've been doing a lot of oysters are like the super beginner easy mushroom, and they're delicious. You just got to figure out different ones like different things as far as how you cook them.
Yeah, I mean, I think pickling. I mean, I think preservation is a really important subject for indoor mushroom cultivators too. Like looking to extend their harvest and hold on to it, because it does, like when things start to grow, oftentimes it's like, oh my word,
they're all there at once.
Yeah, a ton of stuff. We actually did some lacto fermentation with mushrooms, which was kind of fun. So you're getting that added microbiome benefit there. But I mean, it's fun. I think they're very versatile ingredients. They lend themselves to a wide array of preservation techniques, from drying or pickling or freezing. They're pretty cool.
One of the things I picked up this year in making different pickled varieties was the classic pickle ratio of vinegar is 1-to-1 water to vinegar. And I cut that way back to 3 parts water to 1 part vinegar. And it's a much more pleasing thing, because it's not so acidic in your face. And in that way, the actual flavor of the mushroom comes through. And another thing, I'd like your opinion on why I'm getting this result. My blue oysters are growing like kings. Okay. They're this tall. They're huge stems. They make excellent, the fake scallop thing you can do with kings. And I've been playing around with my airflow and my humidity levels and all, and it doesn't change them at all.
Interesting. The first thing that comes to mind is airflow. So usually with blue oysters, if they're growing in that way, where they're bigger stalks, smaller caps, it means that they need more oxygen.
Yeah.
Mushrooms exhale CO2 just like humans do, and they inhale oxygen. So if they're suffocating themselves, they can grow in kind of wonky ways. But it could be something else too, but that's kind of the thing.
I'm not sure. I did think that maybe running the fan full time was too much, so I put a timer on it. And so then I thought, well, because other people said that, so I went to full time on the fan, and it did change and make me get better results with lion's mane.
Yeah.
But the blues keep doing it, and the main reason I want to know is I want to have to do it on purpose, because right now I'm doing it on accident, and it's pretty freaking cool. I mean, they're also chopped up. The stems chopped up like that are really damn good pickled too.
Yeah. I like the stems of blue oysters a lot.
Yeah. And some oysters, the stems are like a stick, pinks. Yeah.
And, it's interesting, the kind of the diversity within the oyster mushroom, where there is quite a bit of flavor, texture differences.
Yeah. Blues are super easy, man. I mean, like I said, that's 2 weeks, starting with just a couple stems and a little bit of coffee. And then as it colonizes, I keep adding more.
Yeah, it's a cool process to do too. Like, not a lot of people are doing kind of that DIY culture work.
Yeah.
That's like a whole nother, I mean, that's
like, if you want to do it with other mushrooms, it's a really, you got to get like a hood and, perfect sanitation and all. All I do is I use an AeroPress for coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool little hack with those are the little puck that pops out is about the perfect moisture.
Okay.
It's just when it comes out, it's perfect. So I just take and I sanitize a Ziploc bag and keep it on the counter. And I just, every day when I make coffee for me and my wife, I pop all the pucks in there.
Yeah.
And I just sanitize this whenever I'm adding it to the jar. I just have a little torch and I just torch the spoon, throw it under the water so it doesn't melt the bag, and then I do a little bit better hygiene when I make blocks. I got another hack I'm doing with the blocks that might be really beneficial. I wouldn't do this at a professional level, but what I do, I have a chamber vac and I vacuum seal a mix of coffee grinds and hardwood chips, about 50-50 and about 10% biochar. I put them in the bag the size I want them, and I actually vacuum seal them, and I throw them in a great big tub with sous vide, and I'd set the sous vide circulator 180 degrees. And I leave it run for like 8 hours like that, which is probably way overkill, but I'm not pressuring it the way you guys do professionally. And I've never had an infection in one of those blocks.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I mean, I think one of the issues that people run into when they use coffee grounds is the nitrogen contents.
Yeah.
A little high. So yeah, supplementing it with wood chips, like you kind of get that carbon nitrogen balance. Yep. And then honestly, like a lot of cultivation is done sort of that pasteurization instead of sterilization.
Mm-hmm.
It works better that way. So like we have in our facility on the other side of this wall here, we have two different processes and two different lines. We have one that's sort of a pasteurization line, one that's a sterilization line. And with certain products, it works a lot better just to do like a longer kind of lower temp atmospheric pressure, kind of pasteurization process, and not doing like the full pressure autoclave system. So we found that with things with wood, like if you're using wood chips, or for us, we use a lot of sawdust.
I use pellets. And
there's pellets, yeah.
Yeah, dump hot water on them.
And the pellets are wonderful too, because they're kind of pre-cleaned.
Yeah.
The heating process of making them. But we found that like actually autoclaving sawdust kind of releases some sort of like it chemically alters the sawdust in a way that isn't always beneficial for mushroom growing. So I think that slow process you're talking about
yes.
is the way.
I just asked an AI, ChatGPT, like will this work at 2 hours? Well, it probably will. Okay, what is the number at which it becomes irrelevant? It said 8 hours. I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter because you just turn it on and walk away from it. So
yeah,
I've sous vide a brisket for 24 hours. So 8 hours for wood chips or wood pellets. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean the system that we used for a long time is we actually took troughs for feeding livestock.
Okay,
and we outfitted the troughs with casters so you could wheel them around. And then we used these like at-home sauna steam generating boxes. You could buy them online for not much money. And we'd pump steam into the troughs and outfit like a lid for the trough. And that's how we steam pasteurized
really?
Large quantities of stuff for quite a while. Like we did a lot of cultivation using that system. Very janky, very simple to make, but really effective.
Yeah. I mean, people have been doing this a long time. We've gotten really scientific with it, but people have been making mushroom patches and growing mushrooms in closets, both for as long as people have probably lived in houses that had closets. So let's talk about a little bit about these systems. Like, can you just talk about how, like, walk people through the process of growing mushrooms in like a boom room grow tent? And I think it's pretty simple, but I think people hearing it will make them realize how simple it is.
Yeah. So the tent is like, I kind of mentioned it maintains humidification, so it creates a humid environment, and it has airflow. So you have an abundance of fresh oxygen and an abundance of kind of humid air for the mushrooms to grow. The system itself can then be used for a number of different styles of mushroom cultivation. So you're kind of like, you have the place to put the mushroom stuff in, but what mushroom stuff you put in can vary. The easiest way to do this is to use pre-colonized we call them blocks of sawdust that have mushroom cells or mycelium kind of growing throughout the sawdust. And you just take those, already colonized blocks, you put them into the boom room tent, you slice an X into the bag that contains the material, and they grow mushrooms. It takes about 2 weeks for most species, and that's like the easiest way to do it. I think from there you can kind of go a little bit more in depth. So you can start to produce your own mushroom blocks. So that requires some understanding of working with mushroom cultures. You can make your own spawn from coffee grounds, and oyster mushroom butts, like Jack's doing. Or you can, try to find some sort of clean space. Oftentimes people use a system called a still air box. Northspore produces something called a knock box, but it's like a self-contained little tent that you can stick your hands in and do culture work without, hopefully, contaminating it with airborne spores. And then so you can do that. You can produce your own blocks, or you could do buckets. So you can take buckets, stuff it with straw, mix mushroom spawn into that, put buckets into the tent. You can grow using tubs or trays where you lay out mushroom substrate and you add mushroom spawn, and they grow mushrooms from the top of the bins or trays. There's kind of a number of different ways that you can use the humid tent, the boom room tent.
Yeah. And I think you said the easiest thing is to just get spawn blocks and put them in there. They're usually called fruiting blocks when they're marketed that way. But basically, any block of a mushroom that is easy to grow or relatively easy to grow in this type of environment will be that. And it was one of those things that when I realized that, I'm like, Jack, you're a dumbass, man. Really? Like, why didn't you? The first time I bought one of those little spray and grow kits, and when I was done with it, I pulled it out of the box. I'm like, it's just a box, just a block of spawn.
Yeah,
that's all it is with a colorful card. And I'm like, well, if you can do that with anything now. I think one of the things we should tell people probably is the best thing to do that with is the spawn blocks made with sawdust. I've not really seen people using grain spawn for that. Grain spawn I've seen more used to inoculate and make those type of things.
Totally. Yeah, there's a difference between spawn and fruiting blocks that it's actually about the generation removed from culture. So when we're in a laboratory working with mushrooms, we start with a petri dish that has mushroom mycelium on it. We take slivers of that petri dish and add it to small bags of sterilized grain, which becomes, we call that master grain spawn. We will use that grain spawn to inoculate, I think it's around 7 to 9 larger 6-pound bags of sterile grain. So we're kind of like expanding the culture ever more. When we have those grain bags, the 6-pound grain bags, that's what we use to produce sawdust spawn or the fruiting blocks, kind of like the sawdust material. So most people aren't cultivating directly off grain because the grain itself often doesn't have the nutrient load that is in kind of an amended sawdust block. So you're not going to get as big yield, and then grain is more expensive too. So you're kind of, it works really well because of the particle size to spread evenly the mushroom culture throughout a large, a larger batch of sawdust or something.
So we can also then, if you didn't want to invest in or give up the space for a tent, a good starting point would be one of your mono tubs. Can you talk about kind of what those are and how those work? They're basically miniature versions of the tent in many ways.
Totally, yeah. So it's a similar system. It's a plastic tub that has holes around the circumference that you put filters over, so it allows a little bit of air exchange. And then we have an automated system that humidifies and pumps air through it. So it's just a mini version of the tent system. It fits 3 or so blocks of sawdust if you do that cultivation technique. You can also use like a sterile substrate, kind of like what's pictured right now. Those are bags of sort of like the soil equivalent for mushrooms. You fill the bin with that material, and then you add mushroom spawn to it, and it colonizes that material and then eventually grows mushrooms.
I've seen people doing like I guess there are probably chestnuts or something like that, where by the time that tub's done, and it's fairly large footprint when you start adding up pounds of mushrooms, like the whole thing's just full. And I'm guessing chestnut was probably what I saw somebody do that with.
Yeah, we've done it with chestnut. I mean, it works really well for a number of mushroom species. But yeah, you'll have like a whole canopy of mushrooms, and you harvest them, and they'll often fruit 2 or 3 times. But it's a great system. It's a little bit more compact. It's a little bit easier to get going with. You can kind of test different mushroom species out, see how kind of fine tune the growing conditions. It's a great system, and it's one that's widely used by mushroom cultivators, and a lot of people who move on to have tent systems or start their own mushroom farms or produce vast quantities of edible mushrooms, they often will start with a bin system.
And it's a good way to get started at a lower cost investment, I guess, too. I mean, that's and you can do them like partially automated, do everything yourself, fully automated, and you guys kind of offer the full spectrum of that. I think I've even seen people using the bottom base units of those tubs and putting them on a rack inside the tent to grow that larger footprint.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The bins work within the tent system too. They're great. I mean, that's like the amount of mushrooms that you can grow using one of those bins is enough to feed a family for sure.
Yeah. And then you guys sell, let me bring this up real quick here. You guys sell one that's just basically the bin, the top, and the filter patches. And I'm guessing if you were wanting to do what we were just talking about, which is use that tray to grow that large footprint of something like chestnuts or black poplar or something like that, what you'd actually want to do is you'd want to let that mycelium colonize the substrate in that bin somewhere else, and then remove that top and put it into the tent, because colonization is a different set of parameters you're looking for than fruiting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you would be, there's a whole kind of concept of contamination in mushroom growing. So if you were to mix your mushroom substrate with your spawn and then put it directly into the humidification tent without allowing it to colonize, it likely will encounter mold spores in the air or something. And
other mushroom spores too. Right now it's competing.
Totally. Yeah. It's usually just something benign like green mold. You'll just see it covered in trichoderma mold, and you toss it out, you clean it, and you start over.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're doing that system, you want to usually inoculate it in
failures like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
There you go. Right there is what he's talking about, guys. That's the only reason I saved it and hadn't got rid of it yet, because I knew you were coming on.
It's a familiar sight. Anyone who grows mushrooms has seen trichoderma, contamination at one point. But you can start this process in the bin, let it fully colonize, and then you put it into the tent system. And we have those bins without the humidification and airflow systems for people who want to grow mushroom species that are less sensitive. Like there are certain mushrooms, oyster mushrooms are incredibly sensitive to high CO2 levels. If you put oyster mushrooms into a bin without an airflow system, they'll just look like coral. They'll be like very stringy and not so attractive. So, but this works fine if you had shiitake blocks. Shiitake don't mind it at all, and they'll grow. They'll grow happily in a system without the added airflow.
Yeah, and folks, those if you don't need all the automation and whatever, or you're gonna get a tent and you're gonna maybe do some colonization and installing these bins like this with just the bin and everything is like $50. So that's a pretty good deal. And initially I was looking at them going, why can't I buy them without the lid? And then I thought, that's because you need to colonize the damn thing before you stick it in there, right?
Yeah, totally. We actually have we produced an educational video all about monotub growing. It's on our YouTube channel, but it kind of goes into the process of like making your own monotub. So if you want to do like the full DIY approach, you can do that too.
Yeah.
But it talks about how to use mushroom substrates, how to inoculate, how to do the colonization process. So it's a good place. Like if you need like the full tutorial on how to do it to check that out. But
yeah, y'all definitely need to subscribe to their YouTube. I picked up a lot of stuff from y'all. One of the things I picked up, as soon as I watched this video, I ordered a great big bag of giant black rubber bands from Amazon. And when you put those fruiting blocks in, banding those blocks to keep air from getting, so they don't try to side fruit into the plastic, that's been a pretty big game changer for me. Just that little tiny tip right there. And don't make the damn holes that big. Just make them small. Let the mushrooms know what to do. Let them pin out.
Yeah.
I did just have a chestnut block blow a hole in the bottom and fruit a whole bunch out the side, though, on me. And it happened to be up against the sidewall, so they smashed into the plastic and they turned into inky slime, and I lost them. But where did you go with this?
They'll figure a way to get out. I mean, we have, like, you mentioned the spray and grow kits. There are these boxes, and they're branded. They kind of look nice. They're gifts. But if you leave one of those things alone, like you forget about it for 6 months, you will find mushrooms growing from
through the cardboard and whatever. That's just more substrate. Yeah. Especially oysters, like cardboard, yum. I'll eat it, like.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about their value as food first, and then we'll get into medicinal value. There's a lot of food value to mushrooms.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing about mushrooms is they sort of walk both lines. Like, they're a delicious food. They're really high in protein. They have a number of micronutrients they're health promoting. They taste good. They're easy to cultivate. Like for an at-home protein source, they're probably the easiest thing to be producing on your own. I mean, you don't have to. It's a lot easier than raising livestock. Maybe like chicken eggs or something is probably the next easiest thing. But they're an incredible food. There's an incredible diversity within mushrooms too. I think people often associate the entire biological kingdom of mushrooms with the button mushroom. So if you go to the grocery store, you'll see.
That's what I said right there. If you don't like mushrooms, you need to try more varieties and recipes.
Yeah, 100%. Because if you go to the grocery store, you see portobellas, you see creminis, you see white button mushrooms, you see brown button mushrooms. Feels like a lot of diversity. They're exactly the same species. They're the same exact thing, just at different stages of growth or different varieties of the same thing. So, it'd be like going to the grocery store and being like, I'm looking for vegetables, and all there are is like cucumbers. It's the one thing. Like,
there's little cucumbers and big cucumbers and skinny ones and fat ones, but they're still all cucumbers.
They're all, So it's like it's been a kind of a great disservice that we've all just kind of grown up in an environment that like has reduced the entire world of mushrooms to a single species.
And usually the person saying that has only consumed them as this watery thing sitting on like a Pizza Hut or Domino's pizza. Yeah, I don't like those either.
Totally. And canned mushrooms can be really good if you're doing it yourself, but there's the cream of mushroom soup that everyone's grandparents fed them forever, and that's always the thing that like we were like, I can't do mushrooms because awful experience or something. But I would
400 different casseroles, and it was all dump a can of that crap in it, right? Like
totally.
Green beans and mushroom cream of soup from Campbell's is not food. Don't, especially canned green beans. Hey, cream of there's gonna be somebody mad at me here in a minute. Live that loves it, with the French's onions on the top or something. Like, that's not mushrooms. That's sorry.
Yeah, or at the very least, if you don't like that, you should try something else and see if you like some other species. But there's some fun ones. I mean, lion's mane right now is probably like the mushroom of the moment. You'll hear Joe Rogan talking about it, Paul Stamets talking about it. It's like it's in every supplement and all this stuff. And it's funny because like we used to cultivate lion's mane before any of that popularity happened, and it was hard to sell to people. Like, we were like, what the heck is this thing? But I feel like there's
a brain, right? You're like,
this hairy kind of brain. You can pull it apart. It's the texture of crab meat when you treat it that way, and it tastes delicious. And it's fun to cook with, and it also happens to be really good for brain health. I mean, there's all these studies coming out now about kind of neuron regeneration, preventing Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline. And it tastes good. It's a good food, so you can kind of get both things at the same time.
It's really easy to prepare and make it good if you know how. Like my main way I make them, I put them on a flat top and I put a press on them, like they do when they're making a lion's mane steak. But I don't do that. I just cook them down till they're firm, and then I mix because they do have that crab-like thing going on. Just butter and Old Bay seasoning.
Yeah.
And it's weird. Once you cook all that water out. And you'd think if you put anything else on it, it's going to cook out. No, once you cook that water out, you throw that butter on there, and it's just like a sponge. It just sucks. You can make it taste like anything. Yeah. But that way has been, and we take strips of those and throw them on burgers, and holy crap, they're delicious. Yeah. And if I gave you that, you might not think it's crab or chicken or something, but you wouldn't think mushroom.
Yeah, no, it's not mushroomy. It's I mean, it tastes to Old Bay seasoning.
It kind of tastes like crab cooked in mushroom butter. Is the way I would put it. Which my best friend Nick, when I told him that, he was like, "Man, that sounds perfect."
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, that's a delicious way to cook. I like use a tortilla press to do that kind of same process.
Oh, okay, that would work.
Just gets all that moisture out, and then you throw it on a hot pan with some fat, some kind, butter or lard. Yeah. Whatever, and fry it up. It's quite good.
So I do it on the flat top. I throw a cast iron skillet on so the skillet's hot too. And then once the mushroom's on, I just put the skillet on top of the mushroom and throw like something for a weight in the pan to make it go faster. And it's
super
easy.
Great technique. Yeah.
And then when I started getting those weird shaped blues, I tried the thing with cutting them about an inch, like scallops, and putting hash marks in them and cooking those that way. And those are freaking amazing. My grandson, 14 years old, kind of a picky eater, he's like, I could smash a bowl of that. Right. So when you can get a kid to eat something, you're doing it right.
When we first were growing mushrooms and selling them, we had farmers markets all over the state of Maine. And we actually would bring a cast iron pan and a little hot plate. And we'd bring like some butter, some fresh herbs, some garlic. And it was like a challenge. People would be like, "Oh, I hate mushrooms. I don't like mushrooms. They're slimy or whatever." And we'd be cooking this stuff up and be like, "Try this and tell me you don't like mushrooms." And I can't think of a single person who ate that and didn't like it. I mean, I think people who don't like mushrooms just have had mushrooms cooked poorly. Like you need to cook them a little bit longer than maybe you think. They shouldn't be like sopping wet or slimy. They should be crispy, kind of meaty. They're very versatile ingredients.
Another mushroom that I discovered after I started growing with your stuff, and I'd never tried before, the golden oyster. Mm-hmm. And they are different, is the way I would put it. They have a different texture, different flavor from other oysters, and they're really pretty freaking amazing. Now those, unlike the lion's mane we were just talking about, you were just talking here in the live stream, and the guy says you can squeeze lion's mane like a sponge. It's way stronger than it looks. I said you can cook the hell out of it too without overcooking it. Golden oysters are not that way. You want to kind of do like a light saute and get them out, or they do overcook. And it's kind of cool. I'm a cook too, and I love to cook. So finding all these little nuances is really cool.
Oh, totally. Golden oysters are an interesting one. I mean, they're kind of brittle. They have a very unique flavor. There's some concerns right now around them, like naturalizing in habitats, and like there's this whole kind of internal debate. We still produce golden oysters on in kits and stuff, but you should be somewhat mindful of it if you don't want it to kind of naturalize the environment.
That's also, we say down here in Texas, that horse is out of the barn.
Yeah.
There's a point where
that's kind of I mean, I feel like it has been around. It's been cultivated for quite a long time at this point, and it's out there. The cool thing with it, though, it actually has there's this medicinal compound called ergothioneine that golden oysters happen to have the highest concentration of it. It's like it's being researched right now. It's like a possible vitamin. Like it's actually like maybe very quintessential to human health. And it turns out the golden oyster is sort of like this like powerhouse for this one medicinal compound, which is kind of interesting. Like lion's mane has had this trajectory of being like very little known to being this now like
iconic superfood. Yeah.
Iconic superfood. And I feel like golden oyster might be actually like at the beginning of that too with this
cool.
ergothioneine. So yeah.
It's different too. Like this is actually golden oyster that's colonizing that. And it's really hard to see on the web camera there, but it's a different than like the blue right next to it. It's like a finer strand, cottony, almost cotton candy like spawn that it develops, and it's much slower than the blues. These were started at the same time, and you can see one's all the way to the top and one's like 3/4. So it's a little slower, but it's daggone easy to do too. It's another one of those like that. This is done from down. It's from one of your kits, by the way.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's got like a very different mycelium, a different scent. I think blue oyster is kind of like, it smells like anise, like kind of like smell. And golden oyster is its own thing. It's kind of got this nutty, I don't know how to describe it. It's like very unique. It's a cool mushroom. It grows well in warmer climates too, it makes it really suitable for folks that are kind of in maybe the southern half of the country or hot summers. We grow it a lot in the summer here in Maine. So yeah, it's a cool mushroom.
Cool, man. Let's talk a little bit about medicinal stuff, because this is one of those places where like if you're eating them, you're getting medicinal benefits, but there's like concentrates or supplements you can take on an ongoing basis, because most people are not going to eat mushrooms every day. And there's some really amazing medicinal properties of mushrooms. I would say they're probably man's second oldest medicine. Because we had to figure out that you could eat certain ones and not kill yourself. And this one kills you. This one tastes like meat. And this one makes you trip balls for 4 days. Like, it takes a while to work that out. Man's earliest medicine is actually charcoal. Right. It's the earliest known thing that man has used as medicine, and animals do it too in nature. I think medicinal mushrooms might be the second oldest thing humans have turned to.
Yeah, I mean, there's the famous Iceman who was found in the Alps.
True.
Famously had mushrooms, like these medicinal mushrooms are known to have health promoting, immune system modulating properties to them. And he had them on him when, he passed away in the Alps, however many thousands of years ago. Very ancient. It's been used medicinally in cultures around the world in different ways for a very, very long time, for different things too. I think most famously mushrooms, reishi and turkey tail, these kind of like are these species that are really good for your immune system. Like they prevent illness. There's a lot of research being done around cancer prevention, and even some parts of the world, cancer treatments are actually prescribed. There are people prescribing mushrooms for that application. But you also have these other mushrooms that are good for brain health, like lion's mane. You have cordyceps, which is used by elite athletes, and it's a mushroom that parasitizes insects that is used traditionally by people in the Himalayas because it helps them with kind of like their respiratory and altitude. It's pretty fascinating, kind of all these different ways that mushrooms can promote health and help you, stay active and healthy. Yeah.
There's a ton of stuff, and like in that book I just read, which is for those that haven't read it, it's by Paul Stamets, but there's a lot of others that are providing chapter authorship throughout the book. And the most fascinating stuff toward the end, they get into some of like the psychedelic mushrooms. And I think most people think hippies and LSD in the 60s, and the medicinal value of that and what's being done with it. It was fascinating to me. And I didn't realize, I knew that you didn't just hand a guy a bag of, like Paul Stamets tells his first use of medicinal mushroom story. It sounds like a combination of mushrooms and the Forrest Gump scene with Lieutenant Dan yelling on a mask. Like, he gets this bag that was probably enough for like 10 doses and eats it, climbs the tree in the middle of a lightning storm and comes down transformed. But that is not what we do. But when I heard the whole process that they use to treat people that are having like PTSD or dealing with terminal cancer diagnosis and having to cope with it, it's like a multi-day thing of learning to trust your guides before you do it. Then they take one pill. They have like a one-day experience. It's like a heroic dose. They go through this, and then they have a multi-day debrief with those same guides to kind of process it all. and the transformative nature of what it's done for people. And you go, well, this is why government and pharma doesn't want it, because I can put this guy on a psychotropic medication cocktail for 30 years, or, he might get by with 1 or 2 or 3 of these sessions over like a year, and he's done forever. But you can't make money off of that. But my God, what we can do for humanity. And the stories from people who have done it and how they view the world differently, how they're kinder people, they're gentler people. They have no matter what their religious belief is, they have a more spiritual relationship with the world and everybody in it. It's pretty amazing. And it's one of those things that, like, all this stuff about we're not supposed to do this, then why do we have receptors for it? Right? There's 2 ways that you can have like a experience from a substance. One is basically it's just toxic and it's trying to kill you, but it doesn't quite do it. And the other is that the body actually has a receptor where these things attach like a key into a lock and they fit perfectly. Years and years of cannabis, it's terrible. Then why do we have an endocannabinoid system?
Yeah.
Right. Why do humans have an exact fit? And these psychedelic mushrooms, those substances have that same kind of key lock feature with humanity. And, Stamets says it's probably because we actually kind of co-evolved, right? Like we have more in common with a mushroom genetically than we do a cucumber.
Yeah. 100%. I think you nailed it. I think we're kind of in this renaissance period of studying psychedelics for medicine, for mental health. You mentioned, PTSD, end of life anxiety, like all of this stuff. These are like universal human dilemmas and struggles. And it's kind of a real disservice that, this line of research and inquiry into using psychedelic mushrooms and other psychedelics really like started in the 1950s, and really had it was just like, there wasn't any politicization of it. It wasn't, it was just people trying to figure out, effective medicine. And it got shut down in the late 60s when, it was like the Timothy Leary and the whole, the hippies in the 1960s kind of like, it was the backlash to all that, shut it down for decades. And now we're finally entering another time where this stuff is getting looked at. And, I feel like everyone's looking at it, and it feels like there's actually going to be some change around it and make these therapies a little bit more accessible to the masses. It's pretty exciting stuff. It's a new age for all of the psychedelic research and therapy stuff. Pretty exciting. I was actually there's a big conference about it in Denver in Colorado in June, where it's, there's like people from all over the world talking about their research on psychedelics, people like veterans who are dealing with PTSD. They do a single session and they're like, they have no symptoms of PTSD anymore. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Kind of my doorway into that whole discussion was years ago, one of the first interviews Rogan did with Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson. And they're big into the catastrophic thing and ancient history and all that, but they're also both fairly big into this psychedelic concept. And I think it was Graham Hancock who said, if I could do one thing for humanity, it would be anybody that's going to hold high office before they take office has to go through a psychedelic experience, kind of like I described for patients in this research. Not, hey, here's a bag of mushrooms, go yell at the sun, but like a guided trip through. And he's like, humanity would be so much better off because the bloodthirsty crap these people pull, they would not be able to do it.
Yeah,
they would not act that way. And he was I use cannabis, but sparingly. He was a like get up, start smoking, go to sleep, he's still smoking guy. And he quit, and he said it was part of it was that experience. Like he had like these entities get a hold of him and say, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
What are you doing? You're not. This is these substances aren't for recreation; they're for mind expansion, and you're abusing this, and you need to not do this anymore. And like I think there's like a lot of people have actually. You think of like, well, it's dangerous. It's a substance. Like there's a lot of people that have quit substance abuse using these psychotropic medications.
100%. It's very anti-addictive. We're in the midst of this opioid epidemic, and I mean, this seems to be one of these modalities for actually curing opioid addiction. It's, like you said, like with a therapeutic process with people who are checking in beforehand, during the session, and afterwards. And like, there's a whole kind of process around that seems to be necessary for it to be an effective treatment. But yeah, I mean, I think it has profound implications for humanity, our ability to communicate with each other, not get into conflict. I mean, I think I think it's a pretty potent medicine in a lot of ways.
I think there's a lot of people who could benefit from it right now. I was going to say the world seems kind of nuts. The polarization in the world, and it seems to me that it's intentional as well. Like if you want to control a society, get it as close to 50-50 divided and hating each other as possible, and you do anything you want. And if that doesn't sound familiar, you're not looking around at the world right now.
Yeah.
And it's where people think that's new. Maybe the hate wasn't as heavy, but the 50-50 division, I can think back to when I was in school, and Reagan landslide election, 48 states, but the popular vote was still like a 1% differential, right? It was like we've been at least 50, 60 years now. It's perfectly split, and I think that's what happens, right?
Yeah, I think these substances kind of show the shared humanity. I mean, and not even, it goes beyond that. I mean, it's like, people talk about their experience of oneness with the world, the earth, the ecosystems. Like, I mean, it's very profound stuff. I'm very excited about kind of seeing where it all goes. And
well, they definitely, and it's weird you call them they as though they're like a living conscious thing, and in some ways I think they are. There's things that happen that don't make sense. I remember reading this study that was done Pacific Northwest. There's this huge mat of mycelium. It's like miles from one end to the other, but it doesn't go in a straight line. It's this network, so it's more than multiple miles to get from one edge to the other. And they put some sort of radioactive isotope on one edge and immediately detected it on the other edge, defying the limitation of the speed of light.
Yeah.
Okay. You can say whatever you want. It happened. They measured it. It's there. How? I don't know. But it's and then the way that mycelium in the soil, like mycorrhizal fungi, allow plants to communicate with each other. Where like this plant starts getting attacked by a pest and it's done for, but the other plants up their chemical defenses because like basically the sacrificial plant tells the other plants through the soil network of mycelium that doesn't exist without the fungi, hey, up your guard, guys.
Totally. Yeah. It's like this whole, like the whole forest ecosystem uses it to communicate. There's a wonderful book about it by, I think, Susan Simard. I can't remember the name of it. Entangled Light, or I can't remember, but it's all about that, the way that, these forest ecosystems use mycelium to communicate. It's pretty cool. And they're fascinating organisms that really we don't fully understand by a long shot. Like where there's so much to learn about mushrooms. And there's all kinds of people doing interesting stuff, from making building materials, like using mycelial bricks and like as a building material, or molding it into packaging. And I mean, they're very pretty wild organisms, really.
Yeah, Stamets has literally made beehives out of mycelium. That's like, and then the bees get no mites.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's like all kinds of, yeah.
What are the best species to get consistent harvests for people that want to grow their own?
So I think I feel like there's a few of them, and it depends on the technique. So I think you mentioned oyster mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms are a wonderful species, both for indoor cultivation and outdoor cultivation. They're very fast growers. They're very resilient to contamination. They taste good. They're medicinal. There's a range of different species within the oyster mushroom family. So they're great. You can grow them, using the fruiting blocks. You can grow them in buckets. You can grow them in bins. You can grow them on beds outdoors. You can grow them on logs. I would say lion's mane, also an incredibly easy mushroom to cultivate. It's great indoors. It's a little bit more tricky outdoors. But indoors, using the fruiting blocks, you can get abundant harvests quite easily that way. You can grow them in bins. We've had success growing them in buckets using kind of like a sawdust blend instead of straw in the bucket. Outdoors, I think wine cap, Stropharia is like easily the most abundant and easily accessible mushroom for that application. So Stropharia, spawn, you can broadcast this. It's very easy. Just break it up and sprinkle it in wood chips or straw outdoors. I use it as like I'll mulch my garden, my garlic beds with straw and inoculate the straw around the garlic with wine cap spawn. And then while I'm waiting for garlic scapes and garlic bulbs, I'm harvesting, pounds and pounds of fresh mushrooms. I do the same thing with my garden paths, which are lined with wood chips. So I'm like harvesting edible mushrooms from my paths while reserving a lot of the space in the garden beds for vegetables. So that's a great species. Wine cap's wonderful. Log cultivation, shiitake 100% is the way to go. Shiitake is super reliable for growing on logs outdoors. Can also be grown very reliably indoors in the tent system or the bin system. I feel like those are like kind of the big ones in my mind. And then you kind of get like, there's like a one tier, a little bit more difficult where you have the chestnut mushrooms, piapinos. Like there's some medicinal mushrooms that you can be cultivating too. But yeah, they're really, and certain people find certain species of mushroom a lot easier to cultivate than other people. Like it really kind of, you can hone your techniques for an individual species and really run with it too.
I think there's a lot. If you want to, like somebody wants to know, is it reliable and regularly cultivated? Look at what growers are growing commercially. Because that's what they're going to do. They're going to grow things they can bet on. And I've also noticed, like, if you have somebody near you that's like a small scale farm, they can be a really great ally, because most of these guys, we have one guy that's doing this in Philadelphia, and he put in our Telegram group, anybody in the area can just come by and get free spent blocks. And those blocks usually have a lot of life left in them. I'm guessing that the reason commercial farmers like do kind of one and done with the block is because they need to level out their production and know I'm harvesting this on Thursday next week. And when you re-hypothecate that block, you don't really know that you're going to get as reliable. It's going to pin on this day and it's going to fruit on this day. Once you have your stuff dialed in, when I put a block that's fully inoculated with pink mushrooms, and I know within 7 days it's going to be there. But that second flush could take 3 weeks. And so you can get those for free from people, and they can be composted. They can be buried in your garden. They can be, popped in your own cultivation tent, because if you're a home grower, you don't care if it takes longer. It's no big deal.
Yeah, 100%. I think I think you are correct. I think indoor cultivators, space is at a premium. And when your second and third flushes from a mushroom block are going to be smaller and further between. So it is just sort of economics. Like it's more productive just to always have that first flush and then remove the substrate. Some growers, we used to keep it for 2 flushes, and then we'd give it to farmers. But yeah, I mean, those things, the wild thing too is when you grow mushrooms indoors using one of these blocks, like you might get like 2 or 3 harvests, and then it seems to stop producing indoors. But for whatever reason, when you bring that thing outside, like very often, like the abundance of fresh air, the change in the kind of environment, triggers additional fruitings. So yeah, I mean, you can, if you have a mushroom farm in your vicinity, in your general area, I guarantee you can have more mushrooms than you could possibly consume just by connecting with it. They're often trying to find people to take their waste.
Yeah, he said he was getting rid of 80 blocks a day.
Yeah.
80 blocks a day. And he's not huge. He's a fairly small scale guy, I mean, that's a lot of material. I mean, just compost alone, it's incredibly valuable. The other thing I've noticed with mushrooms, it seems like earthworms like mycelium.
Yeah.
So maybe if you've inoculated Stropharia and you don't live in a desert like I do, and they don't show up, if you find a bazillion worms in there, they may have ate it all. Stamets talks about in that book about he did an outdoor patch of Stropharia and also just buzzing with bees. and the bees were peeling back the wood chips and feeding on the mycelium. I found that to be kind of crazy too.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I mean, I think the benefits of the mycelium in your ecosystem in your garden is profound too. I mean, I think it's very healthy to add to your compost as well. Like it's kind of like usually a little bit more carbon rich than nitrogen rich, but makes a great amendment and breaks down pretty readily. And oftentimes, you'll find patches of edible mushrooms in your garden when you start using the compost.
Yeah. It kind of naturalizes after a while. Like I said, I've been taking all my spent blocks after about like their third flush, and I just bury them in the garden now. I saw that on y'all's channel, and I found some, I think they were Italian oyster. I called it Italian oyster mushroom jerky yesterday because I'm not checking the garden every single day. I have the
a little dried out.
Yeah, they had fruit in a nice little clump, and they were just like potato chip crisp. But it worked, and you don't see a lot of mushrooms around here, as I was telling you before we got started with the interview. But what you really don't see is mushrooms this time of year.
Yeah,
it ain't rained since like about June 1st.
Yeah,
our relative humidity is like 20%. You just don't see mushrooms grow this time of year, and they're growing in there because they got all the garden stuff and they're underneath it. And then I have I call it drip. It's not really just more like slow leak irrigation. I use PVC pipes with little holes drilled in it for drip.
Yeah, which is amazing. I mentioned before we started the show, but Northspore is also working on a system right now. It's not launched yet. We're hoping to have it out by the end of the year. We'll definitely be ready for the next growing season. But it's an outdoor bed, like a raised bed that is outfitted with shade cloth and a humidity, kind of like a spraying fine mist system, so that if you're in Central Texas or if you're in a place that's really arid, you can still grow mushrooms outdoors. You can use the system to do beds. You can put logs in it. You can put buckets in it. You can bury blocks. So, if you stay tuned and follow the Northspore stuff, that should, it's like almost finished. It's almost done.
Cool. I don't know what you're using for the misting, but there's a product we use for plant propagation called the Mystic. And they're perfect for that, because what we're doing with those is we're using intermittent mist to root cuttings. So like you can root 10,000 cuttings out of shot in like a 4x8 raised bed with mystics in it. And it's not about keeping the soil so wet, it's more about keeping humidity on the leaves without overdoing it. Because when you're rooting a plant that you've cut and you've hurt it, right, and you stick it in with a medium to root it, it will start to transpire really, really fast. Basically, it's like moisture out of the leaves, and it's like it's sweating like a human. And if it goes on too much, the plant will basically kill itself.
Oh, interesting.
And with those mystics, you're able to maintain that humidity. And now I feel like a dummy because I've known about those for like 15 years, and I've never even thought about doing something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that could be the unlock for getting some mushrooms to grow in the summer there.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I can't use them though because my water's so damn hard that it that's why I do the little holes in the pipes instead of regular drip, because my water's so hard it basically stalagmites itself and closes shit up. But really cool idea though. What is maybe some troubleshooting that people can do for common issues? We talked about like stuff getting leggy and increasing your airflow. Is there any other things you can come up with, are common things that new people run into on their first runs?
Yeah.
When they see it, this is what you do.
I think like the biggest advice is to start with start with techniques and mushrooms that are easy. So like if you've never done it before, don't jump into like mixing sterile substrates with mushroom spawn and trying to do this kind of like DIY tech. Like you really just like try getting some fruiting blocks that are already colonized. Maybe get one of the automated systems, or at the very least, like, make your own with like, find a humid spot in your house, put it in your bathroom or by your kitchen sink or something. But like start with something that is easy and will grow. And so you have a good experience and you have fresh mushrooms in a couple weeks and you get the experience of like what they look like, how fast they grow, when you should harvest them. And then try different stuff, kind of iterate on that, try new species, try new techniques. I mean, I think like the biggest issues that people run into are around kind of this contamination, the trichoderma, mold, and that usually will happen if you're trying to do the process of making your own mushroom substrate. It doesn't tend to happen when you're buying mushroom substrate that's already fully colonized. It's a great skill set to learn how to like make your own spawn, how to make your own substrate, but probably starting with some simpler stuff is a good rule of thumb. And then the other things are, pay attention to humidity and airflow. Like if mushrooms aren't growing, it's often because it's not in a humid enough environment, or maybe needs some sort of soaking or, misting more frequently or something to get it to start initiating that mushroom growth. And then when that happens, making sure it has fresh air, but it's also not drying out. It's really just, imagine like the ambient humidity of a temperate forest where it's like, it's kind of shady, there's a little bit of airflow, but it's kind of humid because there's enough moisture in the ground that it's like, that's really what you're trying to replicate.
I guess lighting too. I mean, people think they don't need any light and they don't even want intense light, but I was getting some weird form on like my lion's mane and all. And I just threw 2 UV plant lights up on top of the tent. And all of a sudden I'm getting like perfect, fist-sized balls of lion's mane instead of this weird coral looking
thing. Yeah, they don't photosynthesize, so they don't produce energy from sun like plants do, but they are photosensitive. So they recognize light and use it to direct how they grow and their morphology and how they produce. Energy. So it's important to have light. And there's a whole kind of misconception around mushrooms growing in the dark, and that comes from the button mushroom industry, where there's certain strains of button mushrooms that in order to get their coloration, they are grown in complete darkness. Okay. And that's the only time. It's the one single mushroom species that's ubiquitous that everyone kind of associates with all mushrooms, kind of taking the spotlight and then, causing all these people to try to grow oyster mushrooms and lion's mane in the dark when they like a little bit of light.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lamp in there, and I thought that would be enough for them, and I have some good LEDs in it. But what I noticed the first time I had Piopinos fruit, there's also a window, and they were like a plant. They were all curved toward the window, and I'm like, well, they're probably not getting enough UV then. And like I said, when I threw those 2 plant lights on there, everything goes straight up now, and everything except the blues. And again, I'm not complaining about it. I just want to know how to do it on purpose, because I know damn well if I go move or something and try to do it again, it ain't going to happen. But every damn flush has been that way, and I mean they're huge. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. I think certain species probably are more sensitive to light than others. But that's an interesting note on the Piopino too.
They were bent. I mean, they were bent like if you grow plants, they were completely arced over to, and I'm going to show you this right here, just so you can see what I'm talking about, because this is crazy to me. These are the blues that I'm growing.
Oh yeah. Those are beefy blues. I mean, they look healthy.
Yeah. Oh, they're
I mean, those look good. Like they're fanned out. They're just, I think, just growing some tanks. I don't know.
They're, let me see here. Those
look great. Yeah, they kind of have that king oyster stem.
Yeah. And those guys, the couple there to the left side, I mean, those are freaking, I've never even seen king trumpets with the stalks quite that big. And when they get that big and you cross-section cut them, they actually have a hole in the middle.
Yeah.
But they don't get woody or, like some other mushrooms do or whatever. They stay delicious, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, I mean, the nice thing is if you can grow blues like that, too, like blue oysters are much easier to get second, third, fourth flushes from. King trumpets are really hard. Like you can get a good flush off king trumpets, but it is hard to get a second flush from them.
And they're a warm strain, if there really is such a thing. When I bought them, some blues apparently like a little bit cooler fruiting temps, and some like a little higher. And one of my problems with kings is they want to kind of fruit around like 60 degrees. My house is never 60 degrees. Certainly not this time of year in my climate. And I'm not refrigerating a room just to grow one species.
They're finicky. They're a harder one to grow, and I mean, they're delicious. They're wonderful mushroom, but they're definitely a little bit more challenging. The blue oysters are, you get a similar result from the blue oyster. We also have one that we call the Black King, just sort of it's in the same family as both the King Trumpet and the blue oyster, but it's a little bit more of a mix between the two of them.
I'm gonna try those. I haven't done those yet.
Yeah, it grows a lot more. It grows as easily as a blue oyster, but looks a lot more like
a King Trumpet. I think that's another just overall thing. Grow what wants to grow where you live.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so everybody always wants to grow something complicated to prove they can do it. And you get really advanced, that's fine. But if Sepp Holzer of permaculture fame grew a lemon tree in the Alps and it didn't die, and then everybody wants to grow a lemon, and the person that lives where lemons just grow, they want to grow something like Bing cherries that grow in the northeastern United States and they like cool climates. It's grow what there is an oyster or some mushroom species that likes the temperatures where you are. I started doing this research this year. Phoenix oysters, they like to fruit at 85, 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And patty straw even hotter. And then I didn't know there were mushrooms that like to fruit at 95 degrees. I had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah, I did a video for the YouTube channel in Thailand. I went to Thailand. I visited a couple mushroom farms there. It was a number of years ago. I think it was in 2019. But I went to a patty straw call. You mentioned patty straw. I mean, I went to this farm and it must have been 105 degrees that day. And they're cultivating this mushroom underneath a tarp. They're inoculating stuff and they're trying to make it hotter so that it cooks. And this mushroom loves it. It's wild. And, I think about trying to grow mushrooms in 105 degree weather and I'm like, no way. I couldn't do it, but people figure it out and they have species that it works for them, and I mean, being in Maine, I can completely commiserate with people wanting to grow things that they can't grow. I want some figs, I want some fruit trees, please. Yeah. But it's definitely, if you can align your climate, your local climate with the mushroom species or just the times of year, if you really want to grow cool climate mushroom, just do it in the winter. Find a time where you can really manage those climate conditions.
I did try patty straw in a bioreactor composter this year, and it was well matured too. By the time I did, it was 6 months old, and I got nothing.
Yeah, I've tried it a couple of times and haven't had success with it. I feel
I got the heat. I ain't got no problem with the heat here, and that's going to stay moist because you have to keep a bioreactor moist. So that's not the problem. It just didn't. Nothing happened. Even in some of my other reactors where I've had no fruiting, you pull back your wood chips. I do a wood chip cap on them, and you see mycelium, and literally nothing happened. It was I put dirt in there instead of spawn. So I just decided that, and that's my thing. If something just doesn't work for you, do something else.
Yeah. Try different stuff, and like I said, start with something easy. Patty straw, I don't think it's easy. I don't know.
No, I guess not.
What it needs too. I mean, when they were growing in Thailand, they were shaving banana stalks and stuff. Who the heck knows? Maybe it's you need something else to get it going.
All right, let's take some questions and we'll cut you loose. It's been a great interview. Seiko Mag says, is starting a mushroom truffle farming business extremely competitive? It's extremely difficult. Is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's mostly. I mean, I think truffles are competitive. So we used to sell truffles, and the truffle market is small, and the producers and the places where truffles are coming from are vast. So truffles are growing all over the country, but then you have all the European famous varieties. There's truffles that grow in the Middle East. There's all this stuff. They're everywhere. To have a truffle farm, as far as I understand it, you actually need to have build.
You have a tree farm first.
You have a tree farm first, and then you inoculate, your forest with these truffles. So I think it's probably it would be a labor of love, maybe not a
profitable business.
Probably a hard business to get into. I would imagine, but I'm sure people are successful at it.
I've read up on it, and it seems like there was this big movement to commercialize it heavily and make it more prominent, and everybody's going to make a bunch of money, and then it didn't happen. And what the thought was is you could just take truffles or take soil from around trees that were infected and just infect other trees. And it just has a very low hit rate. And the way they've actually pulled it off is like, that this tree has a association with truffles, and you plant a bunch of seedlings of the same species of tree around it, and you let them grow for like 2 years, and you dig them up and replant them. And that's where they've seemed to have had the best results trying to do this. But as far as I know, no one's really pulled it off to where it's anything like where you can grow shiitakes or something.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is that there's sort of like the two big groups of fungi that are cultivated or are consumed are either saprophytic, so they're eating off dead things. So like every mushroom that we've talked about thus far, oyster mushrooms, lion's mane, shiitake, wine caps, like they're all saprophytic. They're all mushrooms that you just give it a little bit of the food it likes, and they're going to grow and produce. The other big group are mycorrhizal fungi. So this is like all the classic foraged mushrooms, the stuff that you think of when you think of like European cuisine and stuff, chanterelles, porcinis, morels to some extent,
Matakis.
Yeah, matsutakis. Yeah, maitakis you can grow. I think they're more saprophytic, but they're those ones like they're associating with tree and plant roots in a way that we really haven't figured out how to cultivate them effectively. There's actually been a lot of movement on cultivating morels in the past 5 years, but chanterelles, porcinis, like no one knows how to cultivate those, and it kind of makes them fun. They're foraged mushrooms. And I kind of think about truffles in a similar way. Like I think they're more ubiquitous in nature than they're probably recognized. And we're probably figuring out how to identify what's kind of growing in your local ecology, and foraging them might be a more effective way.
Yeah, it kind of spins right into this next question with Kevin. He says, are there mushrooms that cannot be farmed other than morels and chanterelles? And I think it's pretty much everything you're talking about that has that symbiotic relationship. You might be able to cultivate a patch outdoors or something like that, or encourage them to grow. But anything in that realm seems like no one's farming them like in an indoor facility.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can like collect them in the wild, see if they like release their spores, find suitable habitats that are similar, and maybe try to encourage the growth. But and there's a ton of other species other than chanterelles and porcinis. And I mean, morels, again, like there is some cultivation of morel. But I mean, like also death caps, all the poisonous amanitas, like they can't be cultivated. So if you're trying to grow mushrooms indoors, like you're not going to accidentally grow a death cap.
Good point.
There's a, I don't know the number of them, but there are thousands of mycorrhizal species that can't be.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say they can't be cultivated. We just haven't figured out how to do it yet.
Yeah, can't currently be cultivated, I guess is the way to put it. And if we ever do, we're probably not going to do it on sawdust blocks in a tent.
No,
it's probably going to be something else. We were talking about wine caps, Straphorias, before we got on the air, and the one guy I saw do it basically made a dirt tub, right? Like, and he showed it on his video, and there were like roly-polies crawling around, earwigs and shit crawling around in the tub. And he was like, I just did everything everybody said not to do, and it worked. And that might be what it takes, is understand that. But some of these are like, at least Strophoria, we can inoculate, straw or wood chips and grow it. Some of these we've never been able to make grow where we want and when we want. But I think we can figure it out.
Like with Stropharia, it's interesting because like most of the, like oyster mushroom, shiitake, these are primary decomposers. You give them like a blank slate piece of wood or some sterile substrate, and they love it.
Yeah.
Stropharia or wine cap is a secondary decomposer. So it really likes stuff that's already been broken down by other bacteria and fungi. It needs that like soil, it needs the microbe interactions and stuff in a way that's completely different from these species that really want like this clean, pristine slate to start growing. Yeah, it's kind of fun stuff. I mean, the morel, I think my understanding of how they're cultivating morels is they're actually using grass. Like there's some sort of symbiotic mycorrhizal thing with a grass species. They're actually cultivating this. I mean, I'm talking on my ass right now, but it's interesting.
No, that's interesting.
we're figuring
Did you ever see an old movie? Sean Connery was in it. It was called Medicine Man.
Some Medicine Man. I like Sean Connery movies, but
it was. I think it was called Medicine Man. It was. They were in somewhere in South America in the rainforest, and they were researching ways to cure diseases. And of course, they're going to put a road through and smash the forest, and that's the whole storyline. But he discovers a substance that cures cancer, or at least a certain kind of cancer. But he has one little sample of it. And he ends up giving it to a kid from the tribe to save his life, and now they got to find it again. When he talks to the medicine man about it, and he wants to know what's going on, he had used some sort of part of a tree, and the medicine man, when they finally translate it through, basically says something like, "You're foolish. That is only a house for bugs." And what it was is a substance that these ants were producing when they were colonizing it. And it was that substance that was creating this thing. And I think that in the mushroom community, it may be like that. There could be this one little thing that has to be present. And when we research it, it may not have to be present at the time that we know the mushroom's there. It may have to be present during the colonization process, and it may be gone. Yeah. For all the fungi consumes it. We just don't know what those little secret sauce things are. And it seems like, well, they pop up here, they pop up there, but nature's a big ass place. And what looks like a lot is really a tiny speck, of a forest that these things actually grow in.
Absolutely. And there's also like kind of interesting ways that mushrooms will biosynthesize or bioaccumulate things. So like, it made me think of like the example of chaga, for instance. Like chaga is a mushroom. You probably don't find it in Texas, but you find it up here. It grows on birch trees. And it actually, what is harvested is this storage organ called a sclerotia that grows as like a big conch on the side of a birch tree. But it's actually the medicine. It's used as a medicine. It's been used traditionally by Native Americans and then Native Europeans as well as a tonic. A health tonic, but what it's actually doing is bioaccumulating betulinic acid, so like a compound found in birch trees. So you're literally you're taking this mushroom, but really what you're consuming is a medicinal compound from the birch tree, and the mushroom is just sort of like it is the thing that is like coming through the mushroom. So it's that's that with the mushroom world too that we just don't even know about, like where there's depending on how it's growing or where it's growing or what ecosystem it's in, it might be bringing something out that, is not actually the mushroom, it's something else.
Because that would mean if you figured out how to cultivate chaga on something else, it wouldn't have the benefit that the chaga has grown on that other side.
Totally, yeah. And there's a lot of debate right now around that specific thing. There's people who are growing chaga mycelium on grain, then making supplements from psychedelic on grain, and they're like, oh, it's a chaga medicinal, but then there's concern about over harvesting of chaga. There's all these other things that kind of like come into play, but it's just an interesting case study in like what is the organism, what are its medicinal components, like is it the birch tree, is it the mushroom, even effective in these ways?
Well, there's no shortage of birch trees, I'll say that. That's not where I grew up anyway, white or red. Can candy cap be farmed?
Not that I know of. So candy cap is a lactarius species that if you dry it, it's fun because you'll find it in the woods, you'll pick it, and it looks like a little brown mushroom. It's very not exciting. But the second it starts to dry, it smells like Aunt Jemima's, like fake maple syrup. Like it just explodes with the scent. So it's kind of cool because you can make desserts with it. It's a mushroom that you can make desserts with. But I believe that it's mycorrhizal. I don't think you can.
And that's why we can't do it.
Find it in the wild.
Yeah, I think this is one right here.
Yeah.
I don't trust Google Images very much.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's like vaguely. I can't tell from the photo, but
hold on. I think this definitely is one here. If I can actually get the image to open instead of open image in new tab. Let's see right here. That is, I think, that's what we're looking for right there. Yeah. All right, so no, you won't be farming those anytime soon, dude. Next, Eric Earl says, what all is needed to start growing in a boom room? Do I need to continue buying fruiting blocks? It depends.
Yeah, so it really depends. Yeah, I mean, the fruiting blocks are kind of the easy way of doing it. And yeah, you'd have to get on like a subscription or be purchasing in fruiting blocks. However, if you start there, learn how to grow mushrooms and get comfortable with it, you can certainly expand into producing your own fruiting blocks or your own substrate. And so you can do that either by, instead of buying fruiting blocks, you buy a single bag of grain spawn and use that to make 25 fruiting blocks on your own. Or you go even further and you say, I'm going to buy a mushroom culture. I'm going to sterilize grain. I'm going to make grain spawn. Then I'm going to, make all these sawdust bags and produce them all myself and do it that way. So it really depends on what stage of the process you want to jump in at. If you want it easy and fast, you buy in the fruiting blocks and you put them in the boom room and you'll have mushrooms in a couple weeks. But you can geek out on it as much as you want and go as deep in as you feel.
Yeah, I mean, I have one guy that wrote in and said his daughter's gotten, so she's like 16 years old and she's already set up with laminar flow hoods and she's making cultures and all. So she could do it, you could do it, but do you want to? And I also kind of I look at this the way I teach gardening. So like when I garden now, if I'm not direct sowing, I'm starting my own plants or I'm cloning plants and whatever. And I do all that for myself now. And it saves a ton of money. But what I tell people, when you start, you've never gardened before and you've never grown a mushroom before. It's kind of the same thing. Put a garden in, learn to take care of a garden, buy your plants your first season. Because growing the plant is a skill set. Troubleshooting weeds and diseases is a skill set. So let someone else do that. And then as you move into your second season, then starting the plants that everybody grows, that everybody wants. And maybe you can't routinely find plants for you like peppers, but you want to grow fish pepper, which is unique. And local store to it. So start those plants, and now you start learning how to start plants. And then, multiple seasons of doing this, each one of these things is a skill set in of itself. And most people are only going to be able to really master skill sets one or two at a time. And if you try to master 12 skill sets at the same time, you're creating 12 points of failure. And something that, like we said, everybody has points of failure. Like this green jar is a point of failure. And by isolating your points of failure, you can get past that problem and then move on to kind of that next stage. And then the other thing would be it's a hell of a lot easier to make spawn for an oyster mushroom than, from starting from nothing but a mushroom itself than many other mushrooms. So, maybe you buy some of your spawn and maybe you make some of your spawn, because that's kind of what I'm at, the stage I'm at now. I don't ever see myself, with agar cultures and stuff like that. If some people want to fully embrace something, I think there's room at all levels in something like that.
Totally. I mean, there's I mentioned this Thai farm that I visited, and they had an entire mushroom farm. There's no mushroom spawn industry or anything like Northspore there. They did the entire thing in a cyclical way. They grew mushrooms, they harvested the mushrooms. Without having a laboratory, were able to convert mushroom back to mycelium on agar. They use old jars and and did it in open air, and were able to make cultures and then use that to make spawn and use that to make this substrate, grew mushrooms, and then did the whole process over again. It was a completely self-contained, besides the agricultural inputs, the actual, discarded waste materials that they were growing on, everything else was self-contained. So it really depends on how deep you want to get into it. There's certainly, think of the survival, I feel the cool thing about it is you can just kind of self-contain stuff.
Yeah.
And you can continue to propagate. It's like seed saving, but on a much shorter time scale.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's people that start with a spore print and are able to cultivate that, right? I think that's great. I think if you want to do it, go do it. I'm just not I have a full-time business to run, and I got 100 things going out there that involve ducks and geese and chickens and gardens. And that's, you decide how much you want to do for yourself. But I think certain species, you're better off at least starting with grain spawn at the most from someone else, other than trying to come up from the bottom, especially when if you've grown no mushrooms, start easy, Jesse says, You have said, he's talking to me, you have said before you soak wood pellets for your spawn. What is it? I'm not really sure what he's asking. He didn't clarify when I asked him to. All I use to make the pellets ready for spawning is hot water. And I know there's like a weight you can do, X grams of water to X grams. I just boil my tea kettle and dump it on it and a little bit more and throw the lid on it and let it steam for a while. And then I mix in the coffee. And I do that about 50-50. And since I make a lot of biochar, I also mix in some biochar with it because I'm playing with that to see how it impacts things.
The cool thing about wood pellets, we use wood pellets. We still use wood pellets here for as an amendment. But there's a couple notes with them. Like if you're getting them, make sure they're 100% hardwood and there's no binders or anything weird in them. And mushrooms like hardwood. They don't like softwoods mixed in as much. But the cool thing is the actual pelletization process. The making of the pellets involves heat treating them in a way that it kind of pre-pasteurizes them and makes them a cleaner starting material. It also makes them uniformly have a uniform moisture content. So if you're following a recipe or something, you know exactly how much hot boiling water to add. Mm-hmm. And when you add water to them, they crumble and expand and turn into sawdust. Yeah. So it's just a very convenient form to use as a substrate.
And I've been of the belief that putting that boiling water on them is probably going to pasteurize them anyway. But I started doing the blocks in the sous vide tank because I had a little bit of some things getting infected. And I thought, well, this is not a big thing. The other thing is it lets me make a bunch of sterile blocks at once and leave them vacuum sealed until I'm going to use them. So they're just, when a jar is ready, I can just pull one off the shelf and start a colonization. And what I do with that, I'm being cheap and I know I should do better, but I just use the micropore first aid tape. And when I cut that bag open and mix it in to colonize it, I reseal it and then I cut a hole in it and I put 2 layers of that microspore tape over it and it's worked. I mean, that's all I can say for it is it has worked. And it's using things I already have, I guess is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's an awesome way. I mean, I think using the pellets and doing that process is the way for the prior question around I don't want to be buying blocks in all the time.
Yeah.
Like wood pellets, making your own spawn and like kind of these DIY low-tech ways is completely accessible. You're likely to fail a few times before you get it to work, and then it's a learning process, but
those pellets are like a 40-pound bag of the hardwood pellets are like $7.99 at Home Depot or Lowe's. I mean, it's pretty damn cheap when you just go price mushrooms. Go look at a little container, 3.5 ounces of blue oyster mushrooms are at Albertsons or Publix or Kroger or whatever. It's like $6 for this little tiny cluster you can hold in one hand. So I find it to be profitable, I guess is what I'm saying. And maybe he was asking actually about the sous vide and misunderstanding me. So all I'm saying is I take a sous vide like you cook a steak with, and I put the bags of spawn in a big Lexan that I have that's like big enough to do a brisket. So I can fit about 5 blocks in there at once. And I just set that on 180 degrees and put the lid on it and throw a towel over it because it makes it more efficient and leave it there until it gets dark out and I turn it off. That's it. It's real simple. Jesse also said, how do you go from spent block to respawning inoculating medium or producing again? Do you break it apart or what? No, I just basically what I do, I take a big plastic bag and throw the block in that, stick it in the refrigerator overnight, and then put it back in the boom room. I don't know if that's best practice or not, but I think that cold shock kind of helps reboot it.
Well, I feel like there's like an underlying question, I feel like in this that's like, can you take a spent mushroom block and use it to re-inoculate and like start the process over from scratch? And unfortunately, like you can do that maybe once, maybe get away with it, but there's this biological process called strain senescence, which is the further away from that original culture you get, the more times you do this process of like taking your old mushroom spawn and using it to make something new, making more blocks, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and eventually it won't produce mushrooms. So like what Jack's doing with it, where he's taking an actual mushroom, like a stem of a mushroom, and then starting it fresh from that in a jar with some coffee grounds or sawdust, like that is the way to start it over again. Like that refreshes the culture, it brings it back to kind of its original state. and then you can do it. So there's a lot of people first getting into mushroom cultivation.
I see what he's saying.
Continue this one strain and keep using it, but it actually doesn't work that way, and they eventually it will stop producing mushrooms entirely.
Now, what I've done, and I think it actually came from one of y'all's videos again, not the thing I did, but the idea. Sometimes when you get a myceliated block, you buy it from like your place and you're going to fruit it. It has like a thick cap of white mycelium on the top of it, almost like somebody stuck it on there like glue. And I saw one of your videos, I don't know if it was you or somebody else in it, but they said sometimes like you can get fruiting a little bit better if you actually pull some of that off. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can pull some of that off and stick it in here. Yeah. And then I've got a block, and I'm not breaking that block up and making 20 blocks out of it, but I'm going to make another block or two out of the spawn that I'm going to create with it. But like you said, there's multiple times, like it's like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
To lose that, like the original image or whatever.
I think your propensity for infection goes up each time you handle it too.
That too. But for whatever reason, when you take the mushroom, like an actual fruiting mushroom,
okay,
and then start the process from the mushroom,
yeah,
that's how. So when we're
like when nature does it,
yeah, exactly. It's like when we're in the laboratory here, we have a schedule of when we refresh mushrooms. So every so often, we actually grow the mushrooms out, we harvest them, and then we reculture them just to keep that strain really fresh and make sure that the strains that we have are capable of producing mushrooms. They haven't senesced. So it's just an interesting quirk of mushroom biology.
Now, I know I did read in one of Paul's books, Paul Stamets for those listening, that you can take spent blocks and basically completely sterilize them and reuse the substrate. Like as it reduces in volume, you can then rehypothecate it, and like maybe 100 blocks becomes 50 blocks and redo it. I don't see the value in that for a home producer that much, but I guess at like a mega scale, maybe that starts to make sense. I don't know. Or maybe he just likes to write about things that can be done because he likes to write about things that can be done. But to me, like you just take that spent block and bury it in the garden or bury it in a compost pile or whatever, and you get more mushrooms and it breaks down and it contributes to the soil and what have you. All right, let's take this. And I got one more and we let you go. Liberty Cast. Oh, just thank you for today's show saving to my playlist. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. Man, this has been great. You got any final things for people today, Matt?
I mean, I really appreciate being on the channel. I mean, I would say if you're interested in mushroom cultivation, we mentioned it earlier, but check out our YouTube, YouTube/Northspore. We put a ton of energy into educational stuff that really dives deeper into these different subjects, how to grow in tents, how to grow in bins, how to grow in gardens. If you want to check out our website, it's northspore.com. We've got tons of products. We also have a Substack where we're tracking some of, we talked a little bit about the psychedelic research and stuff happening, but that's really our outlet for kind of talking about all the stuff that's happening there. But yeah, I really appreciate being on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, guys, definitely get by northspore.com, subscribe to the Northspore YouTube channel, and all the links that they sent me when they filled out the form to be on the air will be in the audio post on the blog, which I will get up about 30 minutes after we finish up here. Because if you click the link in the video notes below, right now while we're live, it won't work. We're not done yet, but we will be soon. And so if you're driving in your car listening after we publish or something like that, and you want to have all these resources, as always, just go by the survivalpodcast.com. And if you're listening to it in the future and we're speaking to you from the past, the episode is 3717-3717. Just search for that number in the search bar on the site, and it'll pull this right up. Matt, thank you for being with us today. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Take care.
All right, guys, let's wrap up real quick here. I really enjoyed that interview. That's the kind of stuff I like to talk about. When we start talking about making food and medicine at the same time, being able to do it year round, you've really got something. Then when you're able to produce some of this really expensive for not really large amounts of money in your home and be able to eat at a higher level and medicate yourself at a higher level, This is what it's all about. I mean, we're all about self-sufficiency, independence, and liberty here. And I don't know what's more liberating than being able to produce your own food and medicine. And I don't know what's more than self-sufficient other than being able to kind of get into a replicated point where you can do it over and over and over again and get off therapy, is the way we used to describe it in the consulting business. Anyway, with that, before we wrap up, let me remind you, one of the ways you can support me is doing your online shopping at tspaz.com. That's TSPAZ, tspaz.com. All the items I've reviewed are available there. Today's item of the day I brought to you last week, and it is a great product. It's from Olatins. It's the T010 folding titanium scalpel. Hey, you know, a great way to get that mycelium out of the stem of a mushroom would be a scalpel. But seriously, this guy is a little bitty thing about the size of a key, fits on your keychain, opens one-handed, razor sharp, uses standard, I think number 25 surgical blades. So they're sterile when you open the package, and but it's just razor sharp at all times, and they're about $20. Body's made out of titanium. It's a really great tool. I even did a video for you in the write-up on it, so check it out. The other thing you can pick up when you're at Amazon is my book. Says I lost screen share. It looks like it's there to me. My book, Laws of Life. And the book's been out for about 2.5 months now, and we are still selling a lot of copies every day. I really appreciate every one of you guys that have picked up a copy of it. This is a great book, especially for everybody, but especially the young people in your life. Let's say 15 to 35, people that don't think they have opportunity in this world. There's plenty of opportunity in this world. There might be more opportunity today than there's been at any time in history if you go out and you get it. These laws of life are the means by which I was able to build a great career in my life. I came here to Texas after I got out of the Army. I was 21 years old. I literally started with nothing. I drove a $400 car down here. I've never been to college to this day other than to guest lecture. Don't have any degree, no special certificate, no nothing. I built everything I have, and all the career stuff that I've talked about in the past, all of that on these principles that I attempted to codify as laws of life. There's 16 of them. Get this book, put it in the hands of somebody who you want to have just a little bit of a butt kicking and set in the right direction. Will do that. One of my really good friends who is a first sergeant in the Army right now, he put it this way to me after he read it. He said, he was a drill sergeant for a few years. And he said, I wish every single recruit I had ever had read this book before they joined the Army, because either they would have been better soldiers or they would have went and done something else. So check it out again, lawsoflife.com. I'm sorry, Laws of Life is the book. You can get it on Amazon or wherever books are sold. With that, hey, guys, thank you for tuning in today. Have a great day. I'll catch you tomorrow with an expert counsel Q&A show for the week.
Just run you around. They said you should have a house the American way. $1 down, $1 a month, and you never have to pay. There's a better way to do this. Let me show you a better way. You don't have to be another face in the crowd. You don't have to live the way they tell you to. Make your own way, the others will follow. The revolution.